Welcome to Weekends with IIITH. In this series, IIITH faculty discuss their research in ECE and CS domains. We would also like to take this opportunity to remind our viewers that IIITH is targeting at least 25% intake of women students through JEE mode in 2020. Special measures of women students entering through JEE mode include 25% off on tuition for the duration of their BTech and merit scholarships from the second year of BTech. Please visit our website for more information about the JEE Gender Diversity Pool. Introduction of myself. My name is Lalita Vadlamani. I'm a faculty in Signal Processing and Communications Research Center at IIIT Hyderabad. I obtained my master's and PhD degrees from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. I did my PhD under the supervision of Professor P. Vijay Kumar, IISc Bangalore. My research interests include coding theory and applications, information theory, and signal processing. After graduating from IISc, I joined Microsoft Research Bangalore as an intern for a brief period before joining IIIT Hyderabad. Before I continue into the details of my work, I would like to note that I can answer your questions both in English and Telugu. So information is present in a lot of natural and man-made signals. For example, speech, audio, ECG, radar, etc. The signals themselves cannot be interpreted by computers for any processing. So converting these signals, the information in these signals into bits is the key to digital revolution. So once a signal is converted into bits, they can be stored and transmitted easily. So then I would like to give some motivation of coding theory through some simple examples. So let's say we want to communicate a sequence of bits between 2 points which are connected by a copper wire. Similarly, suppose we had to communicate between a mobile user and a base station which are connected by wireless channel. Either copper wire or wireless channel, both are noisy, so which means that with some chance they can flip bits. The bit flipping is what is shown in the figure there. Okay, and the chance is given by P. In order to get information reliably even in the presence of noise, redundant bits need to be added. So if more redundant bits are added, it is wasteful because these redundant bits do not convey any new information. Okay? So the question is, what is the optimum number of redundant bits to add so that information is transmitted reliably? So the question is answered in a groundbreaking work by Claude Shannon in 1948 when he was at Bell Labs. He developed a mathematical theory of communication and precisely identified the limit of what is the optimum number of redundant bits to be added for reliable transmission. And this fundamental limit is termed as channel capacity. And where does coding theory come in? The method to add these redundant bits is answered by coding theory. So the first ever code was discovered by Richard Hamming, who again was at Bell Labs. And the property of this code is that it automatically corrects errors in an error-prone punched card reader. So this is the first ever non-trivial code. Then coding theories have succeeded in achieving what fundamental limit that Shannon proposed, which he called channel capacity, let's say, only in the last 15 years. So LDPC codes are a class of codes which operate very close to the limit which Shannon proposed. They were invented by Robert Gallagher from MIT in 1963, and it was way ahead of their time. But they were rediscovered in 1990s. So one characteristic of these codes is that they are very, very efficient. And I can very quickly give you what are the applications of these kind of codes. These LDPC codes are used in many common applications like digital video broadcast, Ethernet, Wi-Fi, WiMAX, 5G, and so on. Okay. And the companies which are working in these areas, let's say, include Qualcomm, Broadcom, etc. There are another set of codes which are discovered in 2008 by Professor Erdal Arikan from Turkey. So these codes again will be used in 5G communication. And Professor Arikan received Shannon Award in 2019 for his contributions in the area of polar codes. So whatever I described till now are codes for um, channels. Okay. So very quickly, I want to touch upon women in ECE at this point. Okay. So at this point, I would like to mention that I have known a number of women in ECE who contributed significantly to the advancement of theory and practice of communications, both in India and abroad. So it was great to meet Professor Katalin Martin, who received Shannon Award in the year 2013. I had the privilege to listen to her in person during a prestigious conference when she received the award. In the picture on the right are women in communications. So you can see there are a lot of them. So, and this picture is taken at an international conference in our area. So here I would like to emphasize again that we are conducting diversity campaign and we would like more number of women students to enroll in our engineering programs, and this is just a glimpse to show that women have had successful careers in ECE. So the next application of coding theory that I would like to talk about is distributed storage. So consider an application like, let's say, Facebook, Google, etc. So what lies in the background of these systems? As you can imagine, the size of the total amount of data which is stored in Facebook is, let's say, it runs into the order of exabytes. Obviously, all the data cannot be stored in one system, and hence the distributed storage systems come into picture. Imagine that you are opening your Facebook and your earlier posts and images are inaccessible for a few minutes. So this seems unacceptable from a user point of view. However, the data is always stored in nodes which are mostly error prone or failure prone. So to avoid data loss in the event of failures, the system designers introduce redundancy in the background by making more copies of the data. So even if one node becomes inaccessible, the data is present on the other. But copying data is very expensive in terms of storage space. So using codes can significantly reduce storage requirement for the same amount of redundancy. Okay. So this is the application of coding theory in the area of distributed storage, and the companies which are working in these areas include NetApp, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, etc. So I'll briefly touch upon the applications of coding theory in certain emerging areas. So this covers the diversity aspect which is mentioned in the title. So recently coding theory has had intersections with areas like DNA storage, machine learning, blockchains, etc. So these areas are highly interdisciplinary in nature. For example, let's say DNA storage, it is interdisciplinary between coding theory and biology even. Okay. So as you can also see, there are intersections with machine learning and blockchains, so which means there is a lot of overlap of CS and ECE domains in this research topics. So now with this background, I want to quickly touch upon what are my research areas. So I work in the area of applying coding theory for distributed storage. And similarly, there are a lot of distributed computing systems for which I apply coding theory techniques. And I work recently in the area of polar codes. And also we try to design machine learning based codes. So this photograph is a photograph of our center. Okay, and as you can see, there are a lot of girls in our center, and I have a set of almost 10 students whom I'm supervising. A fair number of them are women students as well. Okay, and they are all performing very well both in their coursework and research. So with this, I'll conclude the my talk part of it. Okay, and I'll open the floor for questions and answers, and finally we'll conclude. Okay, so the first question is, what are the opportunities for future studies with these topics? So I can kind of tell you that the topics that I have mentioned are very current, and they are the most sought after in terms of even the conference areas. Okay, so I know several groups in the world who are working on these topics. So that way, there are definitely opportunities for doing masters and PhD in these areas. So, I mean, there are several websites of IEEE, let's say ComSoc or an Information Theory Society, where many of these opportunities are posted. What are the placement opportunities in signal processing? So as I mentioned, so signal processing is a slightly broader domain which I have not touched upon during my talk. But the way to look at it is that it covers more than communications and signal processing, right? So signal processing includes, let's say, speech signal processing, image processing, and there are, I mean, like radar signal processing and several others. Okay. So with respect to communications, as I have mentioned, there is Broadcom and Qualcomm. But I know there are a lot of people, let's say, who used to work in, let's say, Philips, NXP Semiconductors, etc., who work in the areas of signal processing. So there are ample placement opportunities in the area of signal processing. Next question is, what are some of the student projects that have come out as a combination of CS and ECE? So, so the student projects here as such, it's not like a project has one student from CSE and one student from ECE. So it doesn't work that way. But however, the areas themselves are such that either a CSE student or an ECE student can take that project and perform equally well. So that's how I want to put it. Okay. So which means that let's say if any application that I talked about, okay, a CSE student has as much opportunity in contributing in that area as much as a ECE student. Okay, and though I work in theory, right, we are also involved in implementation, so which actually requires a lot of CS background, because there is a lot of coding over multiple machines which is involved, and I have found CS students working very well with those things. Okay, and the implementation that we do in these areas is very important, because that is how academics shows that we can actually build systems. Okay. The next question is IIITH good for ECE? Yes, definitely. IIITH is very good for ECE. In the sense, so I was involved in multiple things. I mean, I know about the curriculum of the ECE students here as well, right? Right from what are the courses which they take in their first year to fourth year, and they have a very strong curriculum. Okay, so including things like hands-on workshops, okay, and robotics courses, and there are several electives with respect to IoT. There are advanced topics in coding theory. So it's a brilliant mix which IIIT gives to its ECE graduates. Okay, and you can see the difference in terms of you are introduced to the core disciplines very early, and then it is done in a very structured way so that your learning experience is enhanced. Okay. Okay, so I have the next question is, what are polar codes? Okay, so polar codes, as I have told, any code is a method to add redundant bits to your information bits. How many bits to add, how to add. Okay, so those are what. So I mean, I'm explaining this at a much higher level. So there are a lot of technical details, but polar codes are a class of codes, okay, which operate very close to what is called channel capacity. Okay, so which means, so suppose if I have a copper wire, there is some number of bits you can push through it. Okay, and whatever is the limit you can achieve, let's say with one of the codes that I have mentioned. Okay, so polar codes is one class of codes. So even to describe them, I require a lot of machinery, but at a very high level, it is a function. I mean, so how to add redundant bits as a function of information bits. So what are information bits? For me, they are, when I convert signals to bits, whatever is there is information bit. But then for information bit, I'm adding some number of redundant bits. I'll keep it at that. Okay. So, okay. So I have some more questions. What is the level of coding required for entry into IIIT? I don't think any prior coding experience is a prerequisite. Okay, so because here even in the first year there are programming courses where programming is, I mean, like coding is done from the scratch. Okay, so that way, as we don't assume anything to enter into IIIT. So let me see some more questions. So isn't theory only for academics and research? How will it help me get a job in industry? Okay, so theory is one aspect of theory is academics and research. Okay, where of course ideas get generated and there is a completely open kind of environment. Okay, but then theory also helps industry a lot. So I can give you one example. So Professor Andrew Witterby, okay, he has discovered an algorithm for which actually we have celebrated, let's say, 50 years of what is the Viterbi algorithm, which is one of the most powerful algorithms in communications, right? Um, he has invented it, and it is the basis on which a company is formed, right? The Qualcomm, which we see, right? It has its roots back to, let's say, an algorithm kind of, which is called Viterbi algorithm, right? So that way, industry is completely based, I mean, I would not say completely, but then it is very much based on theory, which, in conjunction with academics. So that way, it will be slightly downplaying if we say theory is only for academics and research. Strong theory is something which has direct impact on industry. I can tell you another example too. This is from Microsoft Research. Okay, so in Microsoft Research, what happened is there is a strong theory group, and of course there is a strong technology group as well, who are working on Azure kind of system, right? So some of the codes that I have described, let's say for distributed storage, they came out of the theory group, they handed it over to the product group, and later what they claim is there's a Windows servers 8.1, etc. So Windows version 8.1, etc. So they all have these codes as integrated part of their Windows system. Okay, so which means that, and that is the reason why they, as part of the industry also, they have strong theory groups. Okay, so I'm looking at one question which says, how does choosing dual degree help? Okay, um, so dual degree is like you do your 4 years bachelor plus you do, let's say, at least 1.5 year of your master's thesis, right? Of course, you get 2 degrees, that is one thing. But then what it allows you to explore is that if you are interested in doing research, okay, and it is a very good investment that way if you have inclination towards research, and if you want to see if it actually give that time to yourself, then dual degree is a very good option. Okay, because it asks for some amount of time, but that is maybe not too much. But on the other hand, you explore yourself, right? I mean, in the sense of what are your strengths, where does your interest lie, etc. Those become more clear for dual degree students. That's what is the impression that I get when I talk to my dual degree students. So there is another question: what is the scope for girls doing ECE? Can you tell us about any successful scientists who have an ECE background? As I have mentioned, there's a lot of scope for girls in ECE programs. Okay, mainly I'll attribute it to multiple things because ECE has different flavors, right from doing hardware to doing math to doing implementation and several things. Okay, so that way girls have a very good opportunities and also scope. Okay, and successful scientists, of course, I did mention one of the scientists in my talk. Okay, so there's another lady whom I can talk about. Her name is Ingrid Dobishi. Okay, so she is a British lady. I think now she is a professor in Duke University. Of course, quite old. But I did have a chance to interact with her um, during one of the conferences which happened in IISc, and she, did mathematics. I mean, solid mathematics. So, if you have heard about a particular concept in signal processing known as wavelets, lot of it is something which she has invented. Okay, so these are like extremely successful, but then it's there are grades, right? So in a sense, I mean, it may somewhat seem unreachable or whatever, but then I know of a lot of students whom I have mentored, and people who have chosen their master's degrees, who wanted to go to their master's, pursue their master's abroad. So there are several examples I can think of. Okay, who have ECE background and who have done very well. Okay, so one more thing which I can perhaps also mention is there's a professor from, I think, Stanford. Her name is Professor Andrea Goldsmith. Of course, I mean, I do meet her in some of the conferences. She has written a book, okay, on wireless communications, and that is one of the textbooks which is followed all over, kind, right? So women have been doing very well in ECE. So that, I mean, that's the point that I want to make. So how is ECE program offered by IIITH different from other institutes offering such programs? There are three main things. One is that we have a lot of hands-on component in the curriculum very early on. So you will, so we operate in the mode of, practice theory and then again practice. Okay, so initially when you do practice, maybe you don't understand things also, but still doing kind of, you get a feel for it. But then you go back to the theory and kind of back whatever you have seen in your practice with theory. Okay, so that is a very good mix that way. Okay, so that is one part. And then of course the our students do honors projects in their third and fourth years. Okay, so which allows them to kind of explore research areas right in their third and fourth years. Okay, advantage of doing these things is that you don't feel that whatever you are learning in the textbooks or even in your courses is something which is outdated. Okay, it's what is happening right now. Okay, and that you will see only if you see what are the immediate research applications, right? Where is the field moving? So a lot of these things the ECE students get some idea about in their BTech program itself. Okay, which I should say maybe even maybe when I was doing my BTech, I didn't know. I mean, I had to understand it for myself. But here there's a lot of help which is given in that regard. So what opportunities does research open up for us? Okay, so I can give you some example with respect to a few companies that I know, let's say, right? So if you have some experience in research, let's say, then the kind of positions that you are recruited for will be something like, let's say, algorithm development also, because when you do research, people expect you to understand a lot of things. Okay, understand how systems are operating and how algorithms are written and so many things like that, right? So with some research background, I think the positions that you are considered, okay, though the name of the position can still be the same, but the kind of positions which are generally, considered for people who have some amount of research experience, you have an edge over other people who may not have research experience, right? So that is a very important advantage to have, because then you almost get into the core of the company very soon. Okay. Okay. The next question is, what is expected from a student who is interested in computer science? Um, okay. So I am assuming that this is related to research area, because nothing related to IIITH is written here. Okay. So even if a student, let's say, is interested in computer science, what I have found typically is that if you have some inclination towards, understanding things cross discipline, okay, and not just, be in the computer science domain alone, right? So if you kind of slightly go cross discipline uh, in during your degree, let's say, right, even without worrying about how it will help you, okay, including things like you kind of make relations between computer science and biology, computer science and EC, and several things, okay. So this kind of a thing helps a lot, because you can kind of see the whole world is going interdisciplinary, okay. So even if a student is interested in computer science, I think a computer science student also has to look out for applications in other areas and be ready to be open to understanding them. Yeah, that is, I think that's a big plus. So one last, I at least here I see one question. So do you provide internship program to other university students during their BTech and or MTech program? Yes, we do. I have taken at least 3, 4 interns in the past 2, 3 years. Okay, but this is mostly at individual level. So which means the students who are pursuing their BTech mostly write to us, and we have a call or something like that. And then if we see that we have some common interests and they could help, um, so it will be a win-win situation for both. And so it is more at an individual level. So there is nothing like an institute level internship program per se, but I think most of the things that I know of are at the individual level. But then I also know there has been a project here on virtual labs which has been running, and I know that it requires a lot of intern support, and I think they do advertise quite heavily for interns. Okay. So which branch should I opt for if I have no idea about any branch? Okay. So I think the way to look at it is mostly related to what is the thing which has interested you till your plus two, let's say, right? So, I mean, if you kind of spend a little time with either electronics or hardware, some amount of hardware or some amount of math or some amount of physics, okay, or some amount of structural things, right? So then it becomes clear to you that what is it which draws your attention? What is it that you're good at? Okay. And going by that, actually, when you are good at something, when you're interested at something, that is what I will assume is a much better branch choice than going by the popular choices, because what you have understood in the process is that this branch suits you the best. Does game designing come under computer science, or does computer science course help in game developing? I know of a faculty here who does game design course. Okay, so again, students who are in computer science can always take it as an. I mean, I don't think it's a core course per se. It's not compulsory, but then in your in the BTech curriculum there are several elective courses. So, and you can always go and you know do a course on game development. So that is part of it. So, CS student can always do it in case you are interested. Okay. So can someone pursue research fields like astrophysics after doing CSE and ECE? Um, I think definitely you can if you are interested. There are, but yeah, I think what you should look out for is maybe I think during your BTech you would have you know gotten enough expertise with various skills that you need. Okay, and but if you're seriously interested in something like astrophysics, for doing your higher studies, I think you should, choose a appropriate university or an institute in India or abroad. Okay, so that's when where most of the things happen, right? So, but definitely possible. I think EC doing a BTech in CS and ECE will prepare you enough to do these things. The example field which I can think of closely is astronomical signal processing, which because one of the students whom I came across was interested, I read some parts of it also. But yeah, so I'm giving an example. So there is a lot going on in astronomical signal processing also in some institutes. Let's say. Okay, so I would like to conclude the session with some concluding remarks. Okay, so the recordings will be available on YouTube after a few days, and links and email IDs given in the chat box can be used for further contact. The next session in the faculty series is on July 12th and is titled Computer Vision for AI Applications. Please tune in and please watch our social media handles for announcements. Okay. Thank you.